Hi there, my name's James Kelly, and a warm welcome back to Scott Goes Pop. We have a new full-scale Scottish opinion poll from Find Out Now. I don't know if it has independence numbers yet, there's no sign of that so far, but maybe those results are being held back for a day or two, or longer. But there are certainly Scottish Parliament voting intention numbers. However, there's a problem here because you might remember a month ago when the last Find Out Now poll came out, John Curtis raised serious concerns about the credibility of the results on the list question, and he was suggesting that the way the question is posed produces a sort of misleading effect. It leads people to think they're being asked about a second preference vote. Of course, the list vote is not a second preference vote, and you could see in the results that perhaps the Greens were artificially high, Alba were artificially high, and the SNP were artificially low. In this new poll, that problem has become magnified much more, and it's a much more dramatic problem now. It's to such an extent that the list results just have to be regarded as having no credibility whatsoever. You just look at them, you can see they're obviously ridiculous. The results it's not just that the results are so far out of line with previous polls, and they are really far out of line with previous polls from all polling companies, but also the SNP having their vote share has gone up on the constituencies, but on the list ballot, it's gone down dramatically to a ridiculous new low. That result just has no credibility. So I think all we can really do is set aside the list results, and the best we can take from this poll is to look at the constituency results, which are not affected by this problem, and those are meaningful when we can learn something from those. And what those results show are that the SNP are in a good lead. They are on 35% of the vote, which is up to on the previous Find Out Now poll from last month. In second place, but only just, are Labour on 17%, which is up 3 since September. That may seem slightly surprising, but the 14% in the previous poll for Labour stood out like a sore thumb as being much lower than in the vast majority of polls. So this is just like a kind of reversion to the mean. And the previous poll was obviously just understating Labour for random sampling reasons. In third place, just behind Labour, are Reform UK on 16%, which is down 3 on the previous poll. Next up are the Liberal Democrats on 10%, which is down 1. Then we have the Greens actually on 9%, which is down 1. And the Conservatives in a really poor state, as we've been seeing again and again in Scottish polls. They are on just 8%, which is down 2. So in terms of the SNP's vote share of 35%, that's nothing out of the ordinary. It's within the sort of normal range that Find Out Now tend to show for the SNP on the constituency ballot, but it's maybe at the higher end of that normal range. So it's a reasonably good result. I suppose the elephant in the room with these polls that have the Greens on a high constituency vote, relatively high constituency vote, is how literally can you take that? Are the Greens really going to get 9% of the constituency vote? It's hard to imagine. Will they stand in all of the constituencies? We don't know that. Will they even stand in most constituencies? We don't know that. Even if they do stand in all constituencies, is it not likely that their vote will be squeezed somewhat and that the SNP might get some of those votes? Not all of them by any means, but that might push the SNP up towards the higher 30s, and that the current position in the polls may be understating the likely strength of the SNP in the constituency ballot. We don't know, but it is a possibility, and it's something worth bearing in mind. In terms of the seats projection, I'm not even going to attempt to project the overall result for the Scottish Parliament because that's impossible. The list result is so ridiculous. It's just you'd just be pumping in nonsense. But we can take a look at the projection for the constituency results alone. And in those, the SNP are doing pretty well actually. Considering how they've been doing over the last couple of years, this is a fairly impressive result. They would be on 59 out of the 73 constituency seats. That's down 3. But the problem is that if they're going to reach this self-imposed target of John Swinney's of an overall single-party majority, they're going to have to do it on constituency seats alone. They need 65, they don't need 59, and I really struggle to see how they do get to 65. However, time will tell. The Liberal Democrats are on 5 constituency seats. The Conservatives actually hold 5. Labour are on 3 and the Greens are on 1, which I presume, although I haven't checked, would be Glasgow Kelvin because that's where they have the strongest chance. But it's ironic that with these good poll numbers for the Greens that coincide with a really dramatic and unexpected setback for the Scottish Green Party. They've suffered 3 councillors defecting from them to the so-called Your Party, the party of Jeremy Corbyn and Zarah Sultana, which has not been fully set up yet. Also, I think a couple of Green parliamentary candidates, including Ellie Gummersall, have defected, and a lot of members have gone the same way as well. And there's a curious thing about this, which is that Ellie Gummersall has said that one of the reasons she's defected is that she thinks it will help independence, which I struggle with because although a lot of people are very cynical about the Greens' true commitment to independence, the fact is they are a standalone Scottish political party. They've been independent from the Green Party of England and Wales since 1990. That's a very long time. And they have been for many, many, many years consistently pro-independence. Whereas your party, the Corbyn Sultana party, is a London party. It doesn't actually have a stance on independence yet, but all the mood music has been that it will be a neutral stance. And that at best, Scotland's right to choose will be respected, but your party or the Corbyn Sultana party will not be explicitly pro-independence. Now, of course, that's a better position, a far better position than Labour or the Liberal Democrats or the Conservatives. But for somebody going from the Greens to the Corbyn Sultana party, it's hard to see that as anything other than a step backwards. I suppose there is the Craig Murray argument, which is that if the new party is flooded at the outset by pro-independence activists, and all, presumably the vast majority or maybe all of these defectors from the Greens are still pro-independence, then that could push the Corbyn Sultana party in that direction towards being sympathetic towards independence. But a London party is, I mean, the decision is ultimately going to be made by activists across the UK who will be 85% in England. So I struggle to imagine this becoming a pro-independence party. But I suppose if Ellie Gummersall and the others can achieve that, then maybe it will have been worthwhile. But I have my doubts. I mean, the other thing is that the decision that Ellie Gummersall has made and the timing of it, I can't help thinking back to the decision I made in 2021 about joining a fledgling political party when I didn't actually know what its policies were going to be, and I didn't know what its internal culture was going to be, and I thought I knew, I thought I could trust what that would turn out to be simply because of my trust in the man leading the party. But of course, that trust turned out to be misplaced. I thought it was inconceivable that a party led by Alex Salmond would have anything other than a democratic, relatively liberal internal culture with a strong commitment to freedom of speech. So it didn't work out that way. It's ironic though because it was a point at which I was being lectured down the phone by Alex Salmond about the overwhelming need for all of us to respect Yvonne Ridley's right to freedom of speech. And this was just after she had made that disgraceful, despicable comment on Twitter about how, in her view, a vote for the SNP was equivalent to a vote for Jimmy Savile. Absolutely disgraceful thing to say, but Alex Salmond, oh no, he's firm with me. We've got to respect at all costs Yvonne Ridley's right to freedom of speech, which is just, when you think of what happened afterwards and the way that the Alba leadership instructed people like Josh Robertson, Christina Hendry, Chris Cullen to just crack down and smother any trace of freedom of speech from the Alba party. It's just, it just seems incredible that Alex Salmond made that comment about Yvonne Ridley. So certainly my trust in Alba and in Alex Salmond that the culture and the policies would be healthy and in tune with in tune with my own values, that trust proved to be misplaced. Perhaps that wasn't Alex Salmond's fault because I didn't realise at that time how much he was being manipulated and controlled by Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh. But I mean, that's the point, isn't it? With a fledgling party, you don't really know what the forces behind it are. And I kind of wonder if Ellie Gummersall and the others may come to regret their decision and might come to think it was a bit of a hasty decision in the way that I regretted my decision in 2021 and certainly regarded it as hasty. And if I had waited a bit longer, perhaps I would have made a very different decision. So I was going to finish this video by sharing with you what I thought was an exit poll from the Irish presidential election, but I've just realised it was a complete hoax. But nevertheless, it does seem highly likely that the left-wing candidate Catherine Connolly will win quite comfortably, which I certainly regard as good news. She is pro-Irish unity. She is firmly against the genocide in Gaza. She's an enthusiast for the Irish language. She is, in a nutshell, everything that Stu despises. And while I'm on the subject of Stu, make mine a double.